Hello, it is the Line podcast, recorded a day early. We'll explain why. On Thursday, September the 26th, 2024, there's panic in the streets of Ottawa. Not really, but there probably should be. We're going to get into a couple of little scandals that came out of the Capitol this week, and all of them combined leave us feeling a little bit glum about the state of things. Jen is going to give her reaction to what I was writing about earlier this week when the Prime Minister went south. And I'm going to give you a quick update on guns because I love you. All that and more on the latest episode of the Line podcast. This episode of the Line podcast has been brought to you by Unsmoke Canada. Canada can be a global leader in reducing the harm caused by smoking, but it requires actionable steps, including giving adult smokers the information they need to choose potentially less harmful alternatives. Learn more at unsmoke.ca. Well, this week was, we're recording this a day early. It's Thursday. I'm out of town this weekend, family event, and it was either record this very early Friday or very late Thursday. And just recording it at the normal time, but a day earlier made sense, just so that you're not getting up at, oh my God, o'clock because of the time zone difference. Well, we were talking about this, Jen. We're about filming the podcast early this week. It's not like...
We didn't have to fill the podcast by Wednesday morning, all right? We were like, we should just go. I mean... of course, the risk we always take when we record a day early is that more chaos will happen tomorrow or later today that we're going to miss. So, let's just hope
there's no
for the
perfect
best.
Time to release
there's
it. There's
never a perfect time. No, and there's always more chaos coming. So we'll do the best we can with it. 2 quick notes before we get into it. Firstly, I would like you all to admire the fact that I have upgraded my podcast studio. I have a curtain behind me.
Yeah,
these are the efforts. And a fancy little light that has the Line's logo colors in the back. So that's really classy.
I have a World War II propaganda poster.
Yeah, but only in half, so it's really weird looking. It's kind of chaotic. I think you need to get like a room divider or something like that to bring it up. But anyway, secondly, we are going to apologize in advance because we are going to piss everyone off today. If you are a partisan of any stripe, you are going to walk away from this particular episode feeling personally offended and aggrieved, attacked. And
We're
are
fucking sick of all of you.
I mean,
not you, the listeners and viewers. We love you guys, but to the partisans, oh my God.
Yeah. Okay. So I think generally speaking, we're regarded as a center-right podcast, but I think it's safe to say that we have not been particularly impressed by the behavior of the Conservatives on display in the last week, and we're going to explain why. So here we're going to get into it. But first, Matt, I think that you and I should start off the podcast by talking about the chaos in Ottawa. Everything that we have foreseen hath come to pass. There was a confidence motion put forward by the Conservatives on Tuesday. As we more or less expected, the Bloc and the NDP combined to support the continued Liberal government. This has given the Conservatives ample room to attack both the NDP and the Bloc on their respective turf for continuing to string this nonsense along. So like I said, there's nothing I'm surprised about there. A couple of people didn't show up in the House of Commons. I think that what's starting to happen now is that we're going to be set up for the next confidence motion.
Yeah.
And I think also we're starting to see the Bloc begin to waver, or pressure being put on the Bloc begin to waver. We're also going to have to take a look at what this particular confidence motion cost the Liberals. I suspect the bill will come due, so we'll see how much money in taxpayer funds or national credibility maintaining this government for another couple of weeks has required. So, there's nothing surprising that happened there. I mean, the outcome, for anybody who has been listening to this podcast, that outcome should have been very predictable. But that doesn't mean I totally rule out the possibility of a surprise election when the Conservatives try this the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth time, however many times they try it.
You know the expression, right? I used this expression once with someone who wasn't born in Canada, and she looked at me like I'd gone insane. So, but the expression is get the monkey off your back. You know the expression, right? Like,
yeah.
Sometimes you do a thing not because you really want to do it, but because until you do it, it's hard to do anything else because you got a monkey on your back. So I think this confidence vote got the monkey off all their backs. And I think in a weird way, this confidence vote didn't matter. I think the Conservatives had to have a confidence vote as soon as CASA expired. I think the Bloc and the NDP needed an opportunity to say, we're not stooges of Pierre Poilievre. We're going to vote against this because Conservatives are bad. The Liberals needed an opportunity to show that they're not afraid by immediately allowing the confidence vote and kind of saying, bring it on, guys. But now all four of them have done that. The monkeys are off their backs now. The Conservatives have called the snap vote they needed to call. The Liberals have allowed the snap vote they needed to allow. And the NDP and the Bloc have shown that they're not pawns of Poilievre. The next vote is where the real bargaining begins. This is like from now on, it gets real. And the Bloc has come out with their demands. It's what we expected. It was what we were talking about recently about the changing to the age brackets for OAS so that the younger cohort gets as much money as the older cohort. Which would present a
multi-generational liability in the billions of dollars.
Just totally moronic idea. Yeah. But they also now have also added to that more protections for Canada's supply-managed dairy industry.
Oh, good. We need more expensive eggs and cheese. That's what we need.
Specifically dairy. They went specifically for dairy, and they said, I don't know, dairy might be part of, are eggs a poultry management, or are they part of dairy?
It's eggs, chicken, and dairy.
Okay, so however it's officially defined, the Bloc wants the Parliament to pass a private member bill from the Bloc, which would exempt dairy from all future international trade deals.
Oh, good. So not only are we going to protect a very select number of Quebec dairy farmers at the expense of the consumer, now we're going to fuck over all future trade deals, which will also raise the cost of living for the rest of Canada in order to protect this very small. I almost respect it because it really is just
I completely respect
it. It's almost a pointed fuck you to the rest of the country and all of the people who are buying groceries in it. So, one has to demonstrate just the sheer lack of any kind of respect for anyone who isn't like absolutely, it really is utterly transactional, which again, you have to respect.
Blanchet had a really interesting comment where he came out and he said, look, we're asking for reasonable things. This is going to benefit Quebecers, but it's also going to benefit everyone in Canada. He says it's going to benefit the Quebec dairy industry. It's going to benefit the Ontario dairy industry too. He's like, hey, Trudeau, why are you going to vote against this? We've given you something that's going to help old people and dairy farmers in Quebec and in the rest of Canada. So it is 100% in your face transactional politics. He also put a timeline on it. He said he needs this by December. He says he's prepared to give them until Christmas. And after that, he says if they don't get it, the Bloc pulls their support. Let's talk the electoral math, though. The Liberals don't need the Bloc. They only need the NDP or the Bloc. They don't need both. But Blanchet's come out. He's laid down his terms. So the Prime Minister can either accept them or his dance partner must, by default, be Jagmeet Singh.
I also really respect this one because if they do, continue to entrench more and more rights of particular dairy farmers, the only effect that actually has is increased dairy prices for Canadians at a moment when we're dealing with radical increases in grocery prices, which has the interesting effect of both fucking over the Liberals and the Conservatives in a way, because it will increase the prices, which will make people more and more angry at the Liberals for going along with, damaging food prices. But at the same time, it kind of is a bluff on the Conservatives. Because what are you going to do, Pierre? You gonna come after supply management? I dare ya. I dare ya. So, and they won't get punished for it because, of course, the Bloc doesn't run in seats outside of Quebec. So, there's, it's actually quite smart. Again, I have to respect it, even as I'm switching to oat milk as we speak.
The Bloc is really good at politics.
They're good at politics. They're very good. They'll kill the countries. They don't care.
Yeah, they're the only party that doesn't have to care.
They don't have to care.
And I think I told you this a couple of weeks ago. A lot of my political friends in Ottawa will privately, but openly express their admiration for the Bloc because, first of all, they're very good at politics, and they're the only ones who actually get to say what they really think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true.
So,
it's true.
I don't know what the Prime Minister is going to do. I honestly
I just think what people are underestimating is how much political pressure is going to start to build after each successive confidence motion. unless the Conservatives say, hey, you know what, we're not actually getting enough out of these confidence motions, it's not worth it for us to pursue it. But I still don't see that as being the reality. And I think that they probably need to pass 2 or 3 or more confidence motions before they become sated with this particular strategy. So yeah, I think you're right. I think this one is the monkey off the back vote, but the real bargaining, the real shivving now starts to commence. So it's only going to get weirder and more chaotic and more tense as Parliament continues to tick forward. Which kind of brings us to, on the topic of weirder, more chaotic, more tense, more unpredictable human element crap. Matt, do you want to explain what the hell happened between the Conservatives and CTV this week?
Not really. I mean...
But we have to. We must. Unfortunately, we must.
The thing is, Jen, and this is me kind of thinking out loud here on the podcast. This is just me shattering the fourth wall. I don't know what to say first. Do we talk the Bell thing first? Do we talk the defecation stuff first? Do we talk the NDP desperately trying to find some way to stay relevant? Like, this is why I said at the very start.
Great 4 days.
I'm just so sick of all of them.
No, but you can't be, because we run a politics podcast, Matt. You don't have the luxury of being sick of these people. These people are your life.
Do MLB baseball preview.
No, I don't know anything about baseball.
Me neither.
This is all I know.
Guest.
All right, there we go. Look, okay, let's start by just explaining what the hell happened. Let's report the news.
Okay. I think I'm going to do the CTV thing last, because I think we might actually want to break that one out, because there's a hint of media ethics in that, which might make a bit of a separate conversation. But I think what we can fairly say is that this week, we talked about this last week, and people are like, hey, how long can this go on? Everybody who was paying attention this week had some attitude of, oh my God, how long can this go on? Because I think the moment to me that I thought was the most pathetic was the...
We just need to explain what happened.
Yeah, the exchange in the House between the Prime Minister and the Conservative MP, Garnet Genius, I don't know how to pronounce his name, sorry. Okay. He had made it was like during a parliamentary back and forth, because the Conservatives have been freaking out about like how nice a condo the consul in New York has.
Which does seem to be like kind of over the top, but
it's
fine.
Stupid, but here we are.
Okay.
And the Prime Minister had made some reference to like the condo is occasionally used for diplomatic meetings, including when he's in New York, as he recently was. We'll talk about that later. Mm-hmm. And the Conservative MP made some comment along the lines of, were you and Tom Clark, who's the counsel, were you guys in the tub together getting business done? So,
and I think that this is a reference specifically to the fact that the bathtub in this particular apartment is like this hand-hammered, super luxury high-end bathtub. So the Conservatives are trying to make this comment of like, well, or Garrett Genius is trying to make this comment to the effect of, how do you justify a super high-end luxury like hand-hammered bathtub as some kind of legitimate business expense or legitimate diplomatic tool? And in the process, he insinuated that the Prime Minister and is gay, like they're conducting business in the tub, sort of thing.
And also, I think he put a little bit of a verbal emphasis on business, like when he said it, or whatever the term he used. Oh, it was engaged. Were you guys engaging in the bathtub? And yeah.
Look, I see how you get there. I see what he was. Perhaps if I were to be charitable, I would say I would see it what he was trying, the insinuation he's trying to make. The insinuation
you got an unusually big and ornate bathtub, and you're making a joke about doing business meetings in it. If I'm being generous, that's my interpretation too.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not being generous.
Okay.
I think it's a gay joke.
It's a gay joke. It's a gay joke.
And it's interesting, Jen. I don't know about you, but one of the things, especially when people find out what I do, they're like, oh, you must know so many interesting things. And sometimes just to fuck with them, I stare them in the eye. I'm like, what I know would horrify any man. Like just stuff like that. But like normally I'm just like, yeah, I talk to interesting people. Like I try not to get pulled into those conversations. But when I can't avoid it, the number one thing I'm asked is the Prime Minister gay? And my answer is always, I don't think so. I said, to the best of my knowledge, the Prime Minister is likes the ladies and perhaps
Likes
a little
lays
too
a little
much.
too much. I mean, look, I think that if the Prime Minister were gay or bisexual, he'd have no incentive not to just come right out and be straightforward about it.
I agree.
Like, I just don't think it would harm him politically to be honest about it. In fact, it might help him politically to be honest about it. There's no incentive for him to be closeted. So I also don't care. I mean, it doesn't really matter. But look, I mean, I think we need to be honest about what happened in the House. And is it a gay joke? Yeah, it's a gay joke.
I think it's a gay joke.
Is it the type of gay joke that is so egregious or so bigoted that we need to be, chasing Mr. Sorry, the name eluded me.
Genius or whatever.
Genius, sorry. Do we need to be chasing Mr. Genius down the street with bells casting shame or kicking him out of the house? No. I think it was a pretty minor, mild gay joke, but it absolutely was a gay joke, and let's not pretend it wasn't, and let's move on.
Yeah, I have a pretty high threshold for inappropriate off-color humor.
Yeah.
But like, if you're going to tell me a dirty joke, don't insist afterward that I misinterpreted it.
That's right. I think that's exactly correct. I think we need to up our collective tolerance for inappropriate humor in this country and not pretend to be horrified about things that we're not actually horrified about. But at the same time, we can't lie to ourselves about the fact that that was an inappropriate joke.
Don't hand me a shit sandwich and tell me it's tuna.
Exactly.
Like, so I'm not going to go along with this. And really smart conservatives I like are trying to spin this to me, and it makes me like them less.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Because it is what it is. And I'm with you, Jen. I don't think this is DEFCON 1. Let's totally freak out about it. The conservative spin on this officially through channels wasn't a gay joke. It was juvenile. It was immature. They're going to acknowledge that, but it wasn't a gay joke. No, it was an immature, juvenile gay joke.
Yes,
it was like high school level gay joke. Yeah. And
do I think it's necessarily indicative of deep-seated anti-gay bias? Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, but not necessarily not necessarily.
I think that's right. Not necessarily, but not necessarily not necessarily. I do notice that the people who are highly fixated on the question of whether or not the Prime Minister is gay do seem to be overwhelmingly conservative. Mm-hmm. Isn't that just a coincidence? It's just an interesting fact to note.
And it's an interesting fact that I have noted. Honestly, there is a faction within the Conservative Party, and I don't think it's a majority of the conservative movement in this country, but it might be the majority of the Conservative caucus, particularly when they're in opposition. And their remaining MP base is rural Western. I think there's a faction of the Conservative caucus that thinks gay is cooties.
Yeah.
Ew. And maybe they're at the point where I think has been moderation even among conservatives on the gay issue. Like if you take...
Well, there's still now so many gay conservatives operating in and around the Conservative Party that I think that it's pretty hard to be overtly bigoted even within the Conservative Party now, right? Like you'd have to answer to some people who are now openly gay in that space.
I think the progress we've seen, and I'm not denying its progress, is that even fairly socially conservative rural conservatives are probably okay being around those weirdo queers. And that would be for them massive progress. And the rest of us, especially you and I, our generation, who just grew up in an era where being gay was largely or almost completely normalized.
Yeah.
I was just telling someone the other day, I remember the first time a friend came out to me in high school, and my reaction was like, oh yeah, we know you're gay. You're flaming. And then he just laughed, and he goes, but he had been lying to us for years about being gay because he had kind of a complicated family situation. This guy was the gayest guy you've ever met. And he finally, in grade 11 or 12, he came out and he's like, Matt, I'm gay. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that it would be wrong to think that generational shift hasn't happened even within the Conservative Party. Like, I tend to think that conservatives who are under the age of 45,
45, yeah.
45, it's a nothing burger. It's not a big deal. But for the conservatives in the party who are older, they're kind of lingering with the same kind of generational baggage that I think the older Canadians, especially in more rural areas, tend to struggle with. So
the conservative The Conservative Party is an interesting one. And I'm going to make this analysis in a completely non-judgmental way. This is just a raw political analysis. The Conservative Party in government is younger, more urban, and more Eastern. The Conservative Party in opposition is rural, older, and Western, because those are the safe seats.
That's right.
So when the Conservatives lose, the seats they hold are kind of the most conservative, like literally, seats they've got. Whereas there's a huge, broader conservative movement in Eastern Canada, in urban Canada, and I think particularly among younger Canadians who don't get represented when the party loses the 50 or 60 or 100 seats they need to actually be in power. When the Conservatives lose, the most young, moderate, urban MPs, they're the ones who drop out of caucus. They don't drop out of the staff jobs in the broader movement, but they're not in the House of Commons where we have juvenile gay jokes being made right now.
So the only critique I would make of that analysis is that I would, especially when it comes to the gay stuff, the gay issues, I think that it's less divided on the urban-rural thing than you would think, and it's way more divided on age. Because I think that even younger rural conservatives are generally speaking way more homosexuality is way more normalized among even, I think, rural conservatives now who are younger than conservatives who are older. So, like, I do think there still is a bit of a rural-urban divide on this issue, but I think overwhelmingly it's an age thing. It really is an age thing.
Years ago,
I don't want to talk too much about this because I think we're hyper fixating on whether or not this is a gay joke, and I think that there's way more interesting stuff going on. But
let me just mention this though: my 7-year-old, like my 10-year-old, when he was 6 or 7, casually remarked one day that he hadn't known that Elton John was gay and lesbian.
It's cute. Look, I want to get into the CTV stuff.
Should we mention kind of what happened next? So, because of the news
recap.
Sir,
yes, I apologize.
So the Prime Minister, after the tub comment, the Prime Minister goes something like, "Cut out that homophobic crap." And then the Speaker gets on him and says, "Prime Minister, withdraw." And the Prime Minister says, "I withdraw the defecation remark." I saw you today, Thursday,
and I completely had forgotten the defecation remark. Like, that's the kind of week it's been. Jesus.
This morning, Thursday, because we're recording it a day early, Mark Holland, the health minister, he of the "your road trip will spontaneously ignite the atmosphere." Mm-hmm. I don't think they should let Mark Holland talk anymore.
Oh no! Did Mark Holland say something else?
He didn't. It's not that he said anything that was egregiously dumb in terms of like a quip, but he was interviewed about this today, and he was being asked by reporters about the Prime Minister having to withdraw the comment about the defecation, right? Mm-hmm. And the crux of what he was trying to say was, we're human beings, we get frustrated, we make mistakes. But he wrapped it up in such moralizing pontification about what those evil conservatives are doing to them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm on his side on this one. I think what Genius did was wrong. I think it was juvenile, it was embarrassing, and I think it casts his party in a negative light. And I think we're going to talk more about that when we talk about the CB stuff in a second.
Oh, will we ever?
I am not getting the sense the conservatives are ready for prime time, as it were. But then when I heard Minister Holland hand over heart talk about how awful politics has gotten with these conservatives, the Liberals are the most vicious political operators in this country. And I say that weirdly with admiration. Typically, they're really good at being vicious and divisive. And I agree with the minister that I would not expect to hear a homophobic or gay joke, whatever you want to call it, comment out of the Liberal caucus, 100%. But this is the party led by the guy who yelled, "Oh, you piece of shit," in the House. I'm not, and if we wanted to, you and I could go down a list of other dumb things that Liberals have said, the wedges they have driven, the division they have deliberately sowed. It's not the conduct of the Liberals that I find appalling. It's not even their policies that I find appalling. It's the grotesque, hypocritical sanctimony.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's exactly right. And I think that is an evergreen statement that we could like literally frame on a wall because it's something that is endemic to that party. I mean, one thing you have to respect about the Conservatives, like the Conservatives know they're shit posters. I don't think you're going to get...
the NDP.
Yeah.
They're honest.
I don't think that in the same way we kind of respect the Bloc for being able to... It's true, you want to destroy the country, but like at least you're honest about it. You know, the Conservatives... How should I say this? I don't think that you're going to get that same degree of sanctimony from them because they know very well what they are. Right? And that's, to some extent, that's after 10 years of Liberals in power, that starts to feel refreshing. Completely terrible way, right? I'd rather someone be honest with me about their terribleness than to pretend that they're something that they're not, or to be lacking in self-awareness for what they really are.
The four main
and we'll get
parties,
sick of that too. Again, fate.
The four main parties are all really interesting psychological profiles.
Mm-hmm.
The Conservatives and the NDP are fully prepared to be transactional operators, and off the record, more so than on the record, but with people like that, they'll talk about, yeah, we don't have the power to pull this off right now, so we're going to do this for purely political reasons.
Mm-hmm.
The Bloc, as we were talking about earlier, they can just be ruthless. The Liberals do all these things. They're just as ruthless as the others.
Absolutely.
But they can't acknowledge it. And I think it's, I don't know, Jen, how many times I've quoted what Chris Selly said about them, but it's a psychological thing with the Liberals, where they're, I'm going to paraphrase him again, or quote him as accurately as memory allows. The Liberals are the kind of people who sincerely believe they would never, ever do the thing they're currently doing.
That's right.
And like Conservatives, especially off the record, they're like, oh yeah, we're being shitty on this one, but we're doing it for XYZ political reason. The NDP, 100%. They'll say similar. The NDP is a little more starry-eyed, but in general, I think they're pragmatists. Smaller parties always have to be. The Bloc, they'll fuck us all to get like an extra $50 Tim Hortons coupon for like a dairy farmer in the regions around Quebec City. The Liberals struggle even with themselves to admit how transactional and how nasty they can play the political game. It's something, this is a calm idea I've been mooting about. You can only honestly get honest self-reflection from a federal Liberal the first 45 minutes after an electoral catastrophe. The moment leading up to it and starting very quickly after it, they're not prepared to be honest with us, the people, about what they are.
Yeah. On that note, we've shit-talked the Liberals. I think we've given ourselves the runway required to shit-talk the Conservatives. What do you think?
We've kind of been alternating here.
Yeah, well, fair.
Should we just quickly shit-talk the NDP just for a second, just to bring balance to the force?
I mean, if you feel the need to, I don't think that anyone is really necessarily expecting us to have, I think people would be surprised by how much we like the NDP compared to the other parties sometimes. The problem with the NDP
I have found NDP staffers to be probably the smartest.
Well, and the problem with the NDP is I think to some extent they're so idealistic and they're so starry-eyed that they sabotage themselves because they don't want to deal with the compromises of power.
You know why Poland, Taiwan, and Israel are all generally very good at spying?
I have some theories.
Because they're surrounded by much larger enemies.
Interesting, yeah.
The NDP, you know why they have good staffers? Because they're wedged between the Liberals and the Conservatives that can fundraise them 10-1, so they've got to be good. But I just think that my criticism of the NDP this week, and it's not at the same level as the Liberals and the Conservatives, but to my NDP friends here, you guys got your first non-confidence vote in, and I've seen them cleverly. I think this is good tactics. The NDP is saying, we're not going to blow up our own pharmacare plan. We need to kind of hold this thing together until that is enacted.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's going to work, guys. I think you got your one pro-Trudeau confidence vote out of that.
Mm-hmm.
The Bloc is playing the game. I'm saying this, Jen, I'm looking at you, but I'm saying this directly to the NDP. The Bloc is better at transactional stuff than you are.
Oh, by far. Demonstrably.
They are way better at it.
Yeah.
The Bloc came out with their list of demands. They released it publicly. They didn't communicate them directly to the PM. They put out a fucking press statement. And they said, this is what we want, and you have until December to get it to us. Until the NDP is prepared to be that bluntly transactional and ruthless, even at the risk of an election where they would lose maybe half their caucus, the NDP's in deep shit. They have got to figure out an actual plan for how they're going to survive the next 3 months. I don't see it yet. Did you see the new polling this week has shown kind of interesting. The vote splits on the left are going to be so wildly bizarre. The NDP is either going to get 10 more MPs or lose half their caucus. And it's going to come down to exactly how the votes split on this one. But some of the polling models this week now show the Liberals in fourth behind the Bloc and the NDP. NDP, this is a make or break moment for you. And you guys, you evidently do not have a plan to survive the next 60 days.
You don't have the garumba. You lack the garumba.
You know what the Bloc has a fucking ton of?
What?
Garumba.
They do.
I don't know what Quebec language policies would think of Nausicaan, but the Bloc has Garumba. The NDP doesn't. And the NDP guys, if you capped the upside of the poll, you're going to be an opposition party, but you're going to save yourselves.
Well, if you don't, there's an opportunity here. There's a path here for the NDP to become, I keep on saying, like, the Bloc aside, I mean, people have criticized me for not including the Bloc in this analysis, and they're correct. Give me a sec. I just got to yell at my children. But like, I do think that we're moving to, with an English Canada, two-party system. It's going to be the Conservatives and the NDP. But if the NDP can't get its shit together, it's going to wind up being the Conservatives and the Liberals by default. And the Liberals will wind up eating the NDP by becoming a far more left-wing party. And then the Bloc is going to continue to do blocky things, fine. But like, there's a moment here. There's an opportunity for the NDP to actually be ruthless enough to demonstrate that they can take on the banner of the other liberal or left-wing party, a party that is capable of holding power from the center left, even the strong left. But not if they're bad at politics. So could you stop? Could you please stop?
They've got the staffing brains, but they don't have the money. And I don't think they have the leadership.
Oh, they don't. And I think I don't think they have the mindset either. I think that's the big crucial thing. But anyway, look, I do want to talk about CTV. It's a great scandal. Look, do you want to explain what happened with CTV this week, or shall I?
Do you want to do a like and subscribe here?
Like and subscribe. Okay, like and subscribe, and then we're going to get into the CTV thing.
In moments, we talk about the CTV. Hey guys, this is Matt Gurney. You know, we warned you it might happen. We joked about it, but we did record this podcast early, and it is in fact simply later in the day we recorded it. We have been slightly outpaced by news events. In the next segment, you're going to hear Jen and I discuss the standoff between CTV and the Conservatives. After we recorded the segment you are about to listen to, CTV News announced that after an internal investigation, 2 employees were no longer part of the CTV News team. We don't know exactly what that means. We'll probably find out eventually. But we did want to flag this for you. We think the segment you're about to hear still holds up in terms of our analysis of how the two parties were handling it. But we wanted to start with the breaking news from CTV on Thursday. Well, having peed in the general direction of all 4 main parties and having insulted the other party by completely ignoring it as it deserves, we got to talk about a really interesting story this week. So CTV News a couple of days ago, ahead of the run-up to the confidence motion that the Liberals survived with Bloc and NDP support, they ran a story. And Jen, you might actually know this better. Was it an audio clip or was it in text?
I believe it was a video, an audio video clip.
Pierre Poilievre's words were edited together. A series of sentences were chopped together to create one sentence that was misleading.
Well, and the reason why it was misleading, and I think this is important to know, is because the way they had set up, or framed, is how we would call it, framed the confidence motion, was they set it up in such a way as to make it sound as if the Conservatives were voting against the NDP's dental care plan. So the way that the setup has been like, essentially, if the confidence motion comes to pass and we go to an election, it puts the dental care plan at risk. And then the clip of Pierre was radically spliced to make it sound like it was that essentially, this is why we have to call the election, essentially. and then cut back into the segment.
I'm just looking at the summary of it right now.
And yeah, you can quote it
CBC.
directly.
So we're making this fully media incestuous, but let me read you what the CBC said. The Conservatives say CTV spliced together Poilievre's words in a way that gave the impression that Poilievre was introducing a non-confidence motion, which would bring on an election because he wants to do away with the Liberal government's fledgling dental care program. In his scrum with reporters, Poilievre said, "That's why it's time to put forward a motion for a carbon tax election." On the CTV broadcast, Poilievre was heard saying, "That's why we need to put forward a motion." Those words came right after the network's reporter read from a script that said there are questions about dental care's future. So the CTV reporter says there are questions about dental care's future. Poilievre is then heard saying, "That's why it's time to put forward a motion." And they edited out a carbon tax election.
So I think that there's a couple things that we have to note here. One, CTV absolutely and unequivocally screwed up.
They changed some of the words. They didn't just chop the ending. Yeah. They spliced in new words.
Yeah. That is beyond
That's why it's time to put forward a motion became that's why we need to put forward a motion.
Yeah. So it's not even that in editing, whether or not you're editing print or for TV, it can be normal to cut the length of a sentence or cut the length of a paragraph. That's fine. But you can't take words from one section of a paragraph and splice them into the middle of a sentence. There isn't an excuse for that. It's a cock-up.
Yeah. Let me say, Jen, just for the listeners, let me put it this way. If I was Pierre Poilievre and I were to go out and I were to say, we demand a non-confidence vote so that Canadians have a right to vote out this government that has gone too long, is long in the tooth, it is not serving the interests of Canadians. If they cut it after vote,
sure. Yeah,
you save 5 or 10 seconds of airtime.
Yep.
But you can't reorder the words by editing the sound file.
That's right. So there is no dispute that CTV is in the wrong here. And initially, the Conservative spokesperson complained about it in a very professional way. And as a result, the CTV put out a kind of an apology, not particularly great apology.
No, pretty shitty
mealy-mouthed apology. But they did acknowledge the error, and they read out the statement the next day on their broadcast. So they owned it. They didn't own it as effectively as I think they probably should have, but they did own it.
You know what? Give me a second, Jen. I actually have the text of it.
Sure.
Just give me
Let's
1
pull
second.
Up the text of it.
It was, I don't, oh, here it is. Okay, I got the text right here. Sorry, I got to zoom in, my old man eyes. This is the statement CTV released, and this was aired on the next night's broadcast, as you said. Last night, in a report on this broadcast, we presented a comment by the official opposition leader, Pierre Poilievre, that was taken out of context. It left viewers with the impression the Conservative non-confidence motion was to defeat the Liberals' dental care program. In fact, the Conservatives have made it clear the motion is based on a long list of issues with the Liberal government, including the carbon tax. A misunderstanding during the editing process resulted in this misrepresentation. We unreservedly apologize to Mr. Poilievre and the Conservative Party of Canada. We regret this report went to air in the manner it did. Okay. That sounds like a great apology, except for the first sentence, which is it was taken out of context. No, it was inaccurately edited and manipulated. That's not. Right.
And that's not just a mischaracterization. Like
somebody did that.
Somebody did that.
Yeah.
Now, I think that we can talk about the motives of CTV could legitimately range from anywhere from malice to incompetence on behalf of the person who engaged in the editing, and potentially even the producer or the executive producer of the show who oversaw it. I don't know where on that particular spectrum that we're on. Like, I don't know whether or not we're talking about somebody in the editing suite was doing the job of 3 people and just genuinely screwed up. Or whether or not maybe that person in the editing suite has really negative opinions about Pierre Poilievre and went, well, fuck this guy. Neither one of those options would surprise me. And in my opinion, as somebody who's worked in journalism, if there's evidence of malice or if there's a history of this kind of editing, I think that's a fireable offense. I really do. If we're on the other end of the spectrum where we're just dealing with someone who was overworked. Maybe he was trying to edit 3 or 4 packs at the same time. he just saw the entrance and he tried to like get the clip in front. He was overrushed and he made a mistake and he acknowledges his mistake, or he or she, I'm presuming. Then I think that that's probably deserving of a reprimand, but not necessarily a firing offense if it was just an honest mistake. But like, I think that, as I said, there is no dispute from our perspective that CTV screwed up. CTV itself acknowledged it screwed up, so there's no point defending them on that point. And that the nature of the screw up can range anywhere from incompetence to malice. So no dispute. End point. Do I think that a slightly better or slightly less mealy-mouthed apology would have been appropriate? Yes. I also think that we could probably, CTV would probably serve itself a little bit better to be a bit more honest about what happened here and what the consequences are going to take place. However, CTV is not going to do that. And do you want to know why CTV is not going to do that? No, wait. First, let me get into that. I'm going to explain that. Firstly, I want to talk about the Conservatives' response to this, because firstly, initially, the original thing that the Conservative spokesperson put out, I thought was very professional, very reasonable.
Same.
I also think that, the Conservatives are entitled, when a mistake of this kind is made, the Conservatives are entitled to capitalize on it within reason. Like, I think that if we had something to the Pierre Poilievre to come out with a tweet or a statement to the effect of, I appreciate CTV's apology, however, we're still angry at them for this reason. Or if they were to say, we remain committed to be opposed to Trudeau's liberal media subsidies because we think that they're not adequately providing high quality journalism as demonstrated. I think a comment to that effect would have been fair game. I think they could have used that as a fundraising ploy, and I think that would have been above board. Okay, so that would have been a reasonable moment of maximizing politically on a win, essentially. However, the Conservative, and also I would say that the strategic advantage of that would have been realized like 2 hours after the apology. Like there's nothing else to gain once you do that, right? However, the Conservatives didn't really stop in the reasonable place. Like they didn't just take the win and move on. Matt, can you please read out to me some of the tweets that Pierre Poilievre went on?
You're going to have to indulge me again just here for a minute. I need to get these old man eyes, but here I go. Okay, here's one.
But these responses are something else.
The Conservatives have pushed the button. They're, and first of all, I agree with you. Like, accept the apology, but say, hey, like, we appreciate CTV looking into this, but we still think the viewers and the Canadian public deserve a more fulsome explanation of how this happened. And we are asking for a meeting with CTV leadership so they can explain to us what happened and assure us that this will not happen again.
I mean, you can, and also I would even go further. I'd say, I think they're entitled to take a shot at CTV after this. I think they are within like the boundaries of sanity. Okay. But let's read the Pierre Poilievre's tweet. Let's explain why these responses do not meet the boundary of sanity.
So the viewers and listeners know I scrolled through Pierre Poilievre's feed. I had to get by about 1 billion carbon tax non-confidence tweets to find them. Poilievre has been doing two things. He has been retweeting Conservatives, other prominent Conservative MPs who are also losing their minds about this. So I decided not to reread not to read the retweets. I'm just focusing on what was tweeted under Poilievre's name.
Okay.
Here's one. How does the CEO of Bell, which owns CTV, get $13 million the year before his company gets downgraded to one level above junk bond status? This is the crony capitalism of the Trudeau state-run economy. Politicians protect big oligopolies against competition, and those oligopolies use their media arms to give politicians glowing coverage. That's one. The other, this one I thought was weirder. Next time you're on hold forever with Bell trying to get someone to help fix miserable service, remember that Trudeau protects the company against real and complete competition to gain favorable coverage on CTV. No wonder Bell's bonds have been downgraded to one level above junk.
Okay, so I have to break these apart. Okay, so we're going to dissect these for a moment, and I'm going to explain why this is fucking insane. First thing, when Pierre is going off about crony capitalism, I mean, this is something that we at The Line have complained about quite a lot, essentially that Canada is increasingly an octopus economy. So he's right about that. The problem is that he's linking that problem to a fuck up in an editing suite at Bell Media's journalistic outlet. So let's explain here. Bell Media is a massive parent corporation. Bell is the massive parent corporation. Bell Media is a sort of a company within that company that focuses on journalistic outlet. That I'm reasonably sure that Bell would be happy to cleave off from the herd and leave to die because media is not making a lot of money at the moment. Okay?
Absolutely.
So
and
the
I think
idea,
they're trying.
Yeah. So the fantasy that like Bell, the big parent CEO, is like calling it in to like the editing suite of his journalistic arm, being like, make this asshole look bad on his confidence motion. That is insane conspiratorial nonsense. Okay. And I say that as someone who believes that Bell did screw up, and bias might even have been a motivation for the screw up. I would own that. But the idea that the Bell CEO is somehow like pulling the strings on a relatively minor story that everybody has more or less forgotten by now, that is quite a claim without evidence. There's no evidence for that at all. Now, I also understand that there's bad blood between the Conservatives and Bell, the parent company, and like whatever. So like
that's
kind
the
of
background here. The Conservatives are convinced CTV has it out for them.
Okay, and like, hey, maybe there are journalists within CTV who do have it out for them. Like, I don't rule out that possibility. I don't rule out the possibility that CTV's been unfair. But like trying to tie this to some kind of massive crony capitalism is kind of nuts. And here's why I think it's nuts. Because he's right. The oligopoly is real. It exists. We increasingly do live in a system of crony capitalism. So what the fuck are you going to do about it, Pierre? Because I think that what's happening here is that it's real easy for the Conservative Party of Canada to take pot shots at the overworked goddamn editor suite at the CTV newscast. It's way easier for them to do that than to actually break up the oligopoly. So they're going to go for the easy hit. They're going to go for the easy, shallow, juvenile bullshit hit. Oh, they're all out to get us, fake news, blah, 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 over what might have been just genuinely an overworked fuck-up, rather than do the hard work of actually breaking up that very oligopoly they're complaining about. Because they get the same media points either, like they get the same points among their base either way. Right? If they can score the same point from their base going after the fake news media as they can by actually breaking up the oligopoly, they'll do the easy thing. And that's what I think is bullshit about that. Like, I think it's completely a game. Like, it's absolute nonsense. It's a way you pick on the lowest tier shit because it's easier than going after the stuff that will actually make a difference.
This is the equivalent of Justin Trudeau showing up at a pride march.
This is exactly what this is.
It's the symbolic red meat. We're going to send a signal to our base, but we're not going to do anything.
We're not actually going to do anything. We're not actually going to change anything. That would be hard.
But didn't you see how hard I tweeted?
Don't you see how hard I tweeted? Oh, I sent out a big note to like that all of my MPs don't deal with any CTV journalists.
Let's talk about
lobbyists.
that note for a second. Okay.
Let's talk about that note, which by the way is wow. But okay, let's talk about that note.
So the Conservatives distributed internally a memo to all staff and MPs, and it immediately leaked. And I'm pretty confident it was supposed to immediately leak. I think that was a deliberate, strategic, internal memo that was 100% intended to be released publicly. Basically, until the Conservatives are satisfied by whatever act of contrition CTV puts on, Conservatives will not cooperate with CTV News. And I should mention, possibly any Bell staff, which could include Bell-owned radio stations, which, just for a disclosure, I'm a paid contributor at Bell Media radio stations, not at CTV currently, but I don't know if that's now included. But also, lobbyists. And that to me was fascinating.
No, I've got no problem with them cutting off lobbyists, but I have no problem with them cutting off lobbyists not because of this.
To me, the idea that the Conservatives will not speak to any lobbyist who represents Bell is a really interesting and not wrong.
No.
Really interesting signal that the Conservatives know how to hit Bell where it hurts. Because all their lobbyists right now, and Bell has many lobbyists, are now going, holy shit, can I still talk to a Poilievre government, even on a different file? Am I going to be frozen out representing my 11 other clients because Bell is one of my clients?
Well,
the lobbyists are now going to go yell at the Bell CEO You got to go fire the intern or fire the kid that did this or whatever. I'm not saying I like it, but it's shrewd. I think it speaks, Jen, to your point. Like, I'm really admiring the way in which the Conservatives have just punched Bell right in the balls. What I'm not sure about is why they want to punch him so hard in the balls.
No. But here's what I need to point out here is that Pierre is telling on himself here because he's accusing basically the Bell CEO of engaging in some kind of conspiracy to prop up the Liberal government through media coverage, right? Well, he's engaging in exactly the same thing. Well, I don't think that that's necessarily holds as evidenced by the facts, okay? But he is engaging in that because now he's trying to put pressure on the Bell's lobbyists and the Bell CEO to create more favorable coverage for himself. So in his accusation that he's doing this to the Trudeau Liberals, he's openly engaging in this exact same behavior, which is completely unacceptable in my mind. I don't think that it is appropriate to put pressure on media companies for favorable coverage this way. I think that is unethical. So there we go. But anyway, the thing I really just wanted to highlight for this, and the reason why I think that these guys are going, I should say this, to react this way to an admitted fuck up that CTV apologized for and to be continuing to harp on it days after days after days to try and be escalating the conflict to the corporate C-suite, okay? I don't think that this is strategic. What I see here is a genuine emotional outburst. I don't think that this is smart politics. I don't think that this is clever. I think that you have people who feel like they have been aggrieved by Bell, rightly or wrongly, for a really long time, and they're taking a relatively minor story, a relatively minor fuck up, and they're escalating it to full-blown DEFCON, is it 1 or 5? Anyway, they're escalating it to DEFCON 1, not because there's some smart strategic gain to be acquired here, but rather because they're demonstrating lack of emotional discipline.
I agree.
I think this is genuinely an emotional outburst. And I just want to point out to the Conservatives who are listening to this, I know there are a few out there, and I'm going to speak in a language that I feel that you understand. It's giving loser energy. You look like beta cucks because you look like small people who are hyper-fixated on small problems.
Remember how angry Republicans were getting a month or two ago about being called weird?
Yeah?
Same vibe.
Same vibe. So rather...
CTV fucked up and owes a better explanation and
Agreed.
A more fulsome apology. And if the Conservatives were being politically strategic and smart, they would exploit that.
Yes.
They would extract a pound of flesh.
Mm-hmm.
They would fundraise off the apology.
Yep.
And they would be confident that for the next 3 to 6 months, every CTV producer and host is going to be real reluctant to cross the Conservatives. They would be on their absolute best behavior.
Cheerful,
Instead, Pierre Poilievre's firing like rockets, like Hezbollah style, at the C-suite of Bell. That is not strategic.
It's not strategic. It's not smart.
You are alienating instead of do you want Bell to surrender and give concessions, or do you want an intractable forever war?
And also, I'm not even sure what they're trying to get out of it specifically. Like, are you going to break up the oligopoly? Is that the plan here? Because, by the way, you don't need to engage in some kind of weird forever war to break up the oligopoly. You can just do that when you're in power. So you can just break it up. But I don't think you will, because I think that if you had actual intentions of breaking it up, you wouldn't be wasting your time with petty nonsense spit fighting on Twitter. I think you'd be engaging in a serious plan to do that. The other thing I just want to point out is, how should I say this? Again, I don't expect Conservatives to care because Conservatives are demonstrating themselves to be petty and small. But you want to be in an ecosystem where media owns up to its errors and apologizes. You don't want to create an ecosystem where the media fucks up and then says, fuck you, I'm not going to apologize because if I apologize, you're just going to come after me for 3 days straight.
Yeah.
Right? What Pierre's actually incentivizing in the medium to long term is for the media themselves to embrace their role as his enemy. Because if they're not going to be treated as if they're operating in good faith, they're increasingly not going to be incentivized to operate in good faith. But I don't, again, so this is where I'm saying this isn't strategically smart. This is you doing it for the fifis because you fifis got hurt. And my point is, okay, so what you're demonstrating to me is that you're just the right-wing conservative or the right-wing version of the liberals. You're just engaged in shallow, petty little base chum throwing. Like you're not actually serious about reform. You're not actually serious about engaging or changing anything. You just want revenge for the last 9 years. That's it. That's all that actually motivates you.
This is the conservative version of when every Liberal MP tweets that we showed up at some local cafe and heard a really moving story and we're going to protect this from the evil conservatives. It is 100% emotional therapy the conservatives are indulging in, combined with a fundraising push. It's not smart, it's not strategic, and it makes you all look stupid.
And it's not even, like I said, I would have no problem with channeling emotion if you were channeling emotion to some kind of smart strategic end. But that requires emotional discipline that you are not demonstrating.
It fits what we were talking about in the first segment, too, about the juvenile gay joke, right? Like this.
Yeah, it does.
The entire theme here is juvenile.
Yeah, it's juvenile. So here's
control
also,
themselves.
I keep on going back to the Warren Buffett quote. And that is, he says something to the effect of, true power is restraint.
Yeah.
Right? So when you're seeing someone who is not emotionally restrained, what you're seeing someone who is someone who is lashing out because he lacks power, but not only just power over his environment, but power over himself. If Pierre had made the internal shift in his head to being like, holy shit, I'm a prime minister in waiting and there's real power in the wings for me here, he wouldn't feel the need to engage in emotional outbursts in order to indulge in his
entire caucus join in.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like he wouldn't be needing to do that. He would instead be able to say magnanimously, "Thank you very much for your apology. That's appropriate CTV." For example, I still think that this is evidence that Trudeau's media bailouts are not providing better quality journalism, and I'm continue to oppose that, or something like that. He would then send out a giant fundraising email. He would capitalize off that end. Bam, done. He's gained every strategic gain he can gain from that, while also demonstrating magnanimity, and restraint. Like that's the power move. That's the baller move. That's actually some
monogamy.
No, man. I'm sure that he's got that too. But I mean, like that level of emotional restraint would demonstrate an actual grasp on power, and he doesn't have it. Like, he can't help himself. Like it feels like someone who cannot help himself. And a leader's office who's lathering themselves up over, frankly, a really minor thing. I mean, in the greater scheme of things, it is a minor thing. It's a fuck up, but it's not world-ending fuck up here.
It's a fuck up that should be exploited, monetized, and moved on from.
That's exactly right. And he's not only lathering himself and his entire office up, but you can see that, like, the entire conservative ecosystem is now taking cues from this lather up, and they can't demonstrate restraint either. And I mean, some of the stuff that he's even retweeting is even batshittier. I mean, there's like, I don't know if you want to read some of those retweets, but like, no, but I mean, it goes from crony capitalism to creeping communism real quick. And now we're getting into very, very unhinged territory. Especially from a perspective of someone who's worked inside of a newsroom and sees how screw-ups actually get made. It's not because the Marxists are in the gates, okay?
Oh, when we come for you, you're going to know it. And I have been either as an individual or as part of media organizations and editorial boards, well, we have made decisions. We're going to go get this guy, or we're going to take on this ministry, or we're going to pound on this file. And you make a decision that someone has acted in an egregious way, and you go out and you get them.
Yes.
I brought down cabinet ministers. I get it. But this isn't that. This was either, if it was malicious, it was stupid malicious.
Yeah.
And if it was lazy, malicious, then it was dumb lazy. When we come for you, you're going to know it. And we'll put heads on pikes. We do that sometimes.
And I think I do. Yeah, I do think I understand how CTV made this screw up. I think they just chose to frame the confidence motion in their heads around the idea that, well, what types of benefits will Canadians lose if the confidence motion succeeds? So I think that they were trying to frame this. They were trying to humanize the confidence motion, right? Because most normal humans don't give a shit about confidence votes. So they were trying to frame it in a way that the listener or the reader would care about it. So these are the benefits you might lose if this goes through. that's not necessarily a malicious or anti-conservative bent. But when you create that framing and then you send that off to the editorial suite, the editor suite, to sort of rejig the pack, again, by malice or incompetence, that's how that happens. It's not, I really don't think the framing of the story was intended to take Pierre Poilievre out. And I just going to your point, like, look, if we want to take you out, we're going to tell you. Subtlety is not an effective tactic. If media actually thinks that you fucked up, they're going to say so, right? I just...
Anyway. Yeah. A few months ago, I wrote a column, and it was a column where I took responsibility for having gotten something wrong. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even saying this is an object lesson on what CTV should have done. I wrote a column a few months ago, and I went back. I had gone back, and I'd read a column I'd written around the time of the 2021 election, where I had said that if a guy like Aaron O'Toole, former leader, lost, and if the more reactionary part of the Conservative Party took over, the party would become unelectable. And I said the Conservative Party will be taken over by the bitter shitposting fringe, and they will become unelectable. And I had to write a column a few months ago acknowledging the fact that I was wrong. But I wasn't wrong about them being taken over by the shitposters and the trolls. I was wrong about the shitposting trolls being unelectable. And that's something we're all going to have to mull over. And we're going to have to think about that. We're going to have to give that a chew. But what I'm seeing with the quip about the PM engaging with Tom Clark in a bathtub, what I'm seeing with a multi-day, all-hands-on-deck, coordinated social media barrage is shitposting.
Well, and I think that what disturbs me about that and why it disappoints me and it makes my heart sink a little bit is because, look, Canada's got real problems. We have real issues that are going to need real reform. And like the Conservatives are looking set to come to Parliament with an absolutely generational mandate to make significant changes, to turn the ship of state around. And what I'm seeing is a Conservative Party that's content to shitpost. And that's what's disturbing to me.
I'm seeing it almost worse. I'm seeing it. I mean, yeah, we could phrase it that way, right? That they're content to shitpost. I would phrase it a little bit differently. They can't help themselves.
No, they can't. They can't even demonstrate the own internal emotional restraint to be able to recognize that they're overreacting or that they're reacting in ways that are unhinged.
I know there are some conservatives who are kind of on the fence, kind of going, not exactly an "are we the baddies" moment, but it's more of a, are we overreacting to this? But in the end, they all go in.
Yep. So it's like, again, but the partisan mindset and the corruption of the partisan mindset is not limited to the Liberals. Clearly, this is happening on the Conservative side, right? There's a lack of internal dissent that is being taken seriously, but then a lack of internal sort of people in their party to say, maybe we're overreacting here. And what is that going to mean when they're in government? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that like we can continue on to have the Liberals in power indefinitely, because like it's the same problems, right?
Time for a change of government.
It's time for a change of government. I don't think anybody would dispute that. In fact, at this point, the polling wouldn't dispute that. But this is my big concern about what is ostensibly the incoming Conservative government at this point. And every time I see shit like this, I go like, I have concerns.
Look,
I have concerns.
I concluded years ago that these guys were 100% all in on Twitter dunks and memes and shit posting. Or to wrap this all up in a single word, what I think they want to do is revenge.
This is revenge. If you're motivated to get into government and the only thing that's motivating you is revenge, then what changes once you're there?
They want revenge. They want revenge against the media. They want revenge against the Liberals. They want revenge against the WEF for some reason. Like,
okay, fine. That like whatever.
I just want a better tax code.
Yeah, whatever floats your boat. But like when you get there, you are going to be in charge of a government that needs reforms. Needs significant reforms. We need strong crime and punishment reforms. We actually do need strong lobby reforms. We actually do need to break up the crony capitalism bullshit. We actually do need to shift power away from centralized parts of the country. We actually we probably do need to make significant cuts to the civil service and create a more efficient civil service. Like
Tweets. We're getting tweets.
Shit's-
We're gonna get tweets. We're gonna get maybe Instagrams, Reels too. But
they'll feel great. They'll really make people laugh.
no, but here's the problem, though. I mean, this is what the Conservatives are doing is a mirror image of what the Liberals are doing, right?
Yes.
Because the Liberals have figured out that they don't need to deliver substance. What they need to do is deliver feels.
Yep.
And
that's right.
Because their brand, the liberal feels disseminated through an organized, disciplined social media apparatus, usually, not always, but usually have a big smiley face on them.
Mm-hmm.
The Conservatives have a grumpy face.
Yes.
But it's still delivering
it's still delivering feels
through a coordinated social media campaign.
That's right. So
and
it's government by fifis. Which fifis do you feel right now?
The problem we have, Jen, collectively as a country is that this does work.
Yes.
Like if the Liberals or the Conservatives were trying this and it wasn't working, and I know the Liberals will go, hey, it's not working for us right now. No, it's because you guys have been playing the same meme reel for 10 years and it's old. It's stale. And you guys, for whatever reason...
And we'll be getting into that meme reel after the next segment.
Exactly. But for whatever reason, the Liberals are not psychologically able to perceive that they've played out this strategy and they need a change. The Conservatives have not played out the strategy yet. So what we're going to get is angry face or poop emoji memes for years. And it's going to work because this stuff is proven to be an effective source of fundraising. Mm-hmm. It is an effective way at voter ID and a voter mobilization. And it is both sword and shield in political terms because you can go out and grab new supporters with powerful memes. You can also keep your base riled up by reminding them every day why you hate the other guys. Mm-hmm. And it's going to work. And they're going to win a massive majority government, probably 2.
And they're going to squander it.
And they're going to squander it because the entire party is built around the people who are good at the shit posting memes.
Yeah.
And I can't rationally argue against that. And I've made this point so many times before. The politics and the policy side is completely uncoupled from each other. And the political arm of the Conservative Party can probably win at least 1, probably 2 elections by doing exactly what they're doing. Mission accomplished. That is what they want to do. They want to win the elections because that's the revenge. What they want to do with it, and I know we're going to get bullshit flack for this. I know people are going to go, well, actually, the Conservatives have some ideas. Yes, they do. But that's not what animates them.
And the Liberals actually have stolen some of their ideas, and that's good.
The center of gravity for the Conservative Party right now is shitposting revenge. And it's going to win. And
it's going to win.
What I think fascinating, Jen, about this is big picture philosophical. Justin Trudeau was the evolutionary adaptation through the process of politics in Canada that evolved to defeat Stephen Harper. Pierre Poilievre is the adaptation that is evolving to defeat Justin Trudeau. Mm-hmm. 8 years from now, maybe 12, what evolves to defeat Pierre Poilievre? Do the Liberals seize the opportunity to kind of go, we need to stop with the constant Twitter memes and dunks and actually have like a good, moderate, pragmatist, centrist, reform-minded policy initiative? Or do they just find like a new app comes out that is hip and cool and they find new meme attacks in 8 to 12 years?
That strikes me as a problem that isn't happening in the next 2 weeks. So therefore, no conservative will think about it. Because that seems to be the capacity of the strategic thinking on board in this party right now. I don't know if I have anything else to say about this, but like, as I said,
that's what I have to say. We're fucked
no, I'm just
because all the incentives are just more of the same.
But you know what? Hey, maybe we're wrong.
No,
maybe the Conservatives are going to come to power, and maybe they're going to come to power with really significant reforms. Maybe they don't squander the political capital. Maybe they take that revenge, that anger energy, and they channel it into something really positive. Maybe that happens. I can't rule it out.
There are smart conservatives who are generating smart policy ideas. There are.
Okay. But
the problem is, look, I know most of these people, and I can divide them broadly into 2 groups: the policy wonks and the shit posters. Who do you think's cheerful these days, and who do you think's bummed out?
Okay, but here's the thing. I'm saying devil's advocate. Maybe they come to power. The policy wonks find an in. We get real, like I said, we don't squander the political capital. The conservatives actually manage to engage in real positive reforms that gets the country back on track, that slowly moves the ship of state. back to something that most of us could recognize as a positive direction. Okay, maybe that happens, but to convince me that the Conservatives are going to do that now, I would need to see some evidence that Pierre Poilievre and the people around him have the capacity for self-restraint. And right now, they're demonstrating amply that they do not. That's a problem that they need to recognize, rectify, and staff around, frankly, if they're going to fix this. But I don't think they give a shit.
I'm weirdly both more and less optimistic than you are on this one. I think there will be positive change under Conservative government. You're saying it as a maybe. I'm going to go out and say, no, there will be positive changes under Conservative government. Here's where I'm pessimist. They'll be incidental or almost accidental.
Or reactionary.
They'll
be a
get
reaction
some stuff
to something
right.
That's happening. Yeah.
But they'll get some stuff right almost without meaning to, while workshopping the next day's dunk on, I don't know, like Mark Carney, like whatever think tank he's running in 3 years. I don't know.
On that note, like and subscribe to Line.
Yeah, like subscribe.
Clearly, this is why you have to understand. This is why we have the grumpy face. This is the grumpy face podcast. All right, we're going to talk about now we're going to dunk on the Prime Minister.
You want to kill the clip?
Yeah. I just want to say that next we're going to dunk on the Prime Minister. So come back after you like and subscribe The Line, or check us out at www.readtheline.ca.
This episode of The Line podcast has been brought to you by Unsmoke Canada, which is dedicated to helping Canadians who are looking to quit smoking understand the full range of options available. Despite decades of government programs and regulations, today, nearly 5 million Canadian adults smoke cigarettes. Adult smokers who choose to continue to smoke should be aware that other options exist. Right now, accessing information about these options is heavily restricted in Canada. While not risk-free, alternatives such as heated tobacco and vaping products provide a potentially less harmful choice than cigarettes. Cigarettes burn tobacco, resulting in smoke that contains 6,000 harmful chemicals that are associated with smoking-related disease and death. Heated tobacco and vaping products have the potential to significantly reduce this risk. Health agencies around the world are now considering these alternatives to help end smoking. Updated laws can help adult smokers better understand the full range of options available, including the relative risks of these products. Millions of Canadians smoke cigarettes. Technology exists that can help change that, but policymakers need to take actions. Learn more about how a smoke-free future can be achieved at unsmoke.ca. Well, now that you've all liked and subscribed, Jen, I wrote a column a couple days ago about the Prime Minister appearing on the Colbert Show. I didn't plan on writing anything about it. I thought it was kind of a nothing burger and I wasn't interested in it. But then on Tuesday morning, I was sitting in a Toronto hockey rink before the crack of dawn, and my son had a practice and I was bored and I was scrolling my phone and I saw the clips. I said, fuck it, I'll watch them. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's any political lessons to be drawn from the Prime Minister had to say. Nothing that interesting. But it kind of just occurred to me, it reminded me seeing him before a friendly audience, a host that knows nothing about Canada, that 10 years ago, almost every interview the Prime Minister did was deferential, glowing, cheerful. The Prime Minister could show up and go, we're here to make lives better for working Canadians. And people believed him. The Prime Minister tries that interview on CTV, ironically, based on our last chat. He tries that on Global. He tries that, I would say, even on the CBC. He tries it on a Canadian podcast.
He'd get ripped apart.
Savaged.
Yeah.
He has to go to New York right now to get the value of what he says he wants to do as opposed to what he's done.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought that was interesting. Maybe the last place Justin Trudeau can go and capture those Sunny Ways vibes from 2015 is a studio in New York City.
Okay, so here's my observation, and I'm going to get a little meta here because I thought that your column was entirely to the point and correct. If the Conservatives, convinced as they are that the Liberals' problems right now are not rooted in their governance or their lack of vision, but instead are rooted in their lack of competent communications strategy, why is your communications strategy to quadruple down on your on a 10-year-old hits? Like, to me, it's like they're going on Colbert. Firstly, Colbert. Let's talk about this nostalgia you're engaging in to even think that Colbert is a big hit for you. Like, this is in a a lot of online YouTube-y type video reviews, there's a really
I'm
funny
amazed they
little
didn't
thing.
bring out the cast of The West Wing.
Well, yeah, pretty much, right? Like I just want to say member berries. Like, it's member berries. Like, it's been a while since anyone from The Daily Show had the type of peak political relevance that they had in 2015. So to think about, okay, I'm going to cast out a media strategy for Justin Trudeau 10 years in, and you're going on Stephen Colbert, who's like the kind of discount Jon Stewart, who's not even like at his, as I said, he hasn't really been at his peak in political relevancy since the Colbert Report. Like, there's a weird disconnection with where the media landscape is and where the political relevancy is. You know what I mean? Like, it's a nostalgia play. It's a weird nostalgia play. And I'm not even saying that to be disrespectful to Stephen Colbert. I still think he's funny, but like, the late night with Stephen Colbert is not the Stephen Colbert show of old, man. Like, it just ain't. And also I even think that if he had done that with Jon Stewart's Revive show, Jon Stewart wouldn't have let him get away with that.
Yeah.
Second thing I just wanted to point out is these guys keep on thinking like the way to turn around a failing con strategy is to go after puffball interviews. And I kind of made this point with when Justin Trudeau did the long interview with Jesperson, for example. I'm not trying to be shitty to Jespo, right? I'm not trying to be shitty to Jespo. He did what he does, and that's fine. But like, he didn't gain a single thing. He didn't gain a single point. He didn't move a pawn across the board by doing an interview with a friendly, right? Same way he's not gaining any, like, all he's demonstrating here by going on the Colbert Report is that he's got the kind of cultural clout and flex to be popular enough to go on a show that is watched largely by highly progressive people in liberal enclaves in America who don't really know very much about what's going on in Canada. Okay, so like that, what chess piece are you moving across the board by demonstrating that? All you're getting at, it's almost a flex. It's just a flex. That's all that is. It's not moving the dial. It's not changing anyone's mind. It's not persuading anybody. It's just showing, look at how popular I am among these progressives who are in New York, and you're impressed, right? Like, that's all it is. It's a status flex. If you actually want to persuade people and move the dial and move the board, ironically, you need to actually do the hard interviews. You need to be able to go into Vashi Capello's show or the Line podcast or whatever. Like, pick an uncomfortable space. Jordan Peterson. Go to an interview with Jordan Peterson. He's probably one of the most popular
I'd rather see
Canadian...
Vashi or Mercedes Stevenson take on the PM.
I would too, but I'm just saying, like, you need to actually get conflict, and then you need to see him perform well and answer well. That's actually how you move the chess pieces across the board. That's how you get persuasion. Not only do you need to see him attack Pierre Poilievre, but you need to see him answer for his own record or lack thereof in a compelling way that doesn't rely on liberal talking points or doesn't rely on trying to speak to an audience he's already convinced. And the fact that he's not even attempting to do that tells me that either he or his team knows he can't. It's like it's giving loser energy, right? So anyway, that's the thing I would just point out. It's in a meta way. It's a really weird. We'll just recapture 2015. It's one of the major problems of this party is that it failed to recognize that it wasn't 2015 anymore, and it hasn't been 2015 since 2016. And I don't just mean that to sound clever about the numbers. I mean, it hasn't been 2015, and the end of the hopey changey vibes ended the moment Trump got elected the first time. The whole vibe shifted after that, and these guys never managed to recalibrate. They never managed to find their footing really fully after that. And I think they frankly lost their moral authority to govern in the SNC Lavalin scandal, and they were never able to regain a majority after that. And these guys are still operating like, if we can just recapture the lightning in the bottle that was 2015, if we could just recapture the optimism, hopey-feely vibe. And I'm like, oh boy, guys, the world has moved on from the hopey-feely vibe. We are no longer in the hopey-feely generation. In fact, it's been 10 years since we've moved on from the hopey-feely vibe. And you have not been able to pivot to meet that moment. And they've been struggling on their comms side ever since. And their strategy, instead of acknowledging that failure and shifting the vibe, that it's just, again, it's the member berries thing. We're going to go back. Remember when Stephen Colbert was popular? Remember when Jon Stewart was popular? Remember member berries. Like, it's Like I said, yes, Mercedes Stevenson, do a show with Vashi Capellos. I said, I would send him on to go do and hold his own against Jordan Peterson. I would send him on to go hold his own against someone like Ben Shapiro. Like, go put him in a place where there's going to be actual conflict, where he's going to be challenged and he's going to be forced to fight and win. The problem with this dude is that he thinks that it's his God-given role in this world to fight and win, but then he's not actually willing to get into a ring with a worthy opponent. He's only willing to go against the ring against people who are going to hold their punches and throw puffballs at him, and then he wants all of the credit for being this great grand warrior in his own mind. It's a fail. It doesn't work as a communication strategy if we're going to presume that the Liberals' problems here are solely confined to a communication strategy. It doesn't. It fails on its own merits. Anyway, that's my ramble.
No, it's interesting. You brought up a lot of interesting stuff, and there's one thing I'm going to disagree with you on partially, but also while agreeing with you because I'm magnanimous. The PM
magnanimity.
Yeah, see, I nailed that. That was a flex.
You had magnanimity?
Yeah. The PM in some situations will put himself in a situation where he takes punches. He's always been pretty good about taking raw, unedited questions from the people. Remember that clip in the summer where that guy at the steel mill or whatever was chewing him out? The PM is willing to mix it up and actually debate people and disagree with them, but not in interviews. And I don't know why. You part of your I'm not going to call it a ramble. I'm going to say your seasoned and well contemplated observances. You touched on the medium of late night TV. And that's actually really interesting because in the original draft of the column that we published this week, I had a paragraph about that. But the problem was I realized that I was going to need to go look up ratings and then look up Canadian specific ratings and look at demographics. I was going to have to do more work than I thought the point I wanted to make in the paragraph was worth it. So I just deleted it. But I think you're bang on in that it is a really interesting thing because I agree with you. Justin Trudeau, and this might sound like a personal criticism. I don't mean it that way. Trudeauism, we'll call it that. The Justin Trudeau style of government is obsolete. But when it wasn't obsolete, going on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert would have meant more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think there has been, I think the ratings would back this up, late night TV in the United States, the celebrity focused interview format. You have a band who plays you in and out of every segment. That's a dying medium. We're probably not going to have that in 20 years. I think one of them, maybe it was Fallon or Kimmel, I'm not sure which one, but one of them just a few weeks ago, I read in one of the entertainment trade magazines that they're cutting their production schedule. They're producing fewer episodes. They're shifting these shows into generating short form online content.
Yep.
That's the future of that.
Yep.
A PM near the end of his time went on a show that is near the end of its time. Stephen Colbert will probably have a replacement as host of The Late Show. I don't think that guy will have a replacement as host of The Late Show, or at least by that time, it'll be something else entirely. But I want to bounce off of this, and I want to throw something at you here.
But first, I just want to respond because you said, well, Trudeau will take punches against the people sort of thing. Yeah, but he performs poorly. There's a reason why those clips go viral, and it's not because he does well. It's the Conservatives who make those clips go viral because he performs poorly. Yep. That's the problem.
I think, I think that's mostly true. What's interesting about this is it was a conservative who told me this years ago, where they told me something that's everything happens when you're in power is that being in political office is like a kind of time warp because you don't have time anymore
to pay attention to what's happening in the culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're no longer someone who is fully immersed in sports, music, movies, TV, podcasts, books.
Right.
Then they take on a job like prime minister or chief of staff to the prime minister or special advisor to the prime minister or whatever. This probably applies to the opposition parties as well. The moment you hit that high pressure job, your pop cultural connections die.
Right.
So is it
it's like
PM
coming back in,
realize that Colbert doesn't matter that much anymore?
Yeah, or it's like that sense of when they come out of power, all of a sudden they have to figure out how to fill their own car with gas again, right? Yeah, it's
and
it's in a bubble,
kids,
right? It is.
kids use words that they'd never heard of, and that TV show they were really enjoying was canceled 4 years ago.
Yeah.
After 2 lackluster seasons under new writers, and the band they liked has broken up. And I wonder if that's part of it. But it's interesting, and I promised the.
But this is why you need to cycle in new advisors. It's a huge part, which they don't do. Right. This is part of the reason why you try to compensate for that failure, and was why so many politicians fail to compensate for their weak points by staffing appropriately around them. One of the big failures of this government is that they have not cycled in new advisors. They have this weird loyalty kick or this weird paranoia thing around bringing in new people. And as a result, they're not getting the flow of a new vibe, right?
I think it was William Buckley who said
Skibbity Riz.
Remember the Buckley quote, a liberal is someone who says they're open to new ideas, but is then shocked and offended to discover that people have new ideas or alternate ideas. The liberals, and this is something Paul Wells has written about a lot. I don't know if it's the conservatives when they come in will probably be worse, but I think the current government we have is the worst we've ever seen of not believing in good faith outside criticism. Mm-hmm. So even the idea of staffing up around your weaknesses would require admitting there are weaknesses.
That's right.
And I don't think they're good at that. And I think that's part of why they keep doing the same thing over and over, because they're not able to accept the signal that they are receiving on any number of sensors right now that they've got a problem.
Well, and actually, I want to correct here, because there have been the odds new staffers come in.
Oh, sure, they replace attrition.
They'll replace attrition.
Yeah, but they haven't done a strategic rethink of what do we currently not have that we should staff up, because if they don't have it, they don't value it.
Right.
And at the start of the podcast, the very start, the intro, I had said I wanted to give a quick duly noted on guns, and I'm going to do it now because it actually fits. Dominic LeBlanc, the public safety minister and intergovernmental affairs minister, he gave an update a couple days ago about the gun confiscation program from 4 years ago. And apparently we're going to get some announcements the next few months and then maybe in the next year. And I wanted to duly note that because the gun file to me is fascinating, because it's not relatively low tier priority. By the Liberals' own internal logics, there are 100,000 killing machines that are currently owned by Canadians. When are they going to get around to doing anything about it? 4.5, 5 years after saying they will? A couple months ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago, Nathaniel Erskine-Smith, Nate, the Liberal MP for Beaches East York, I don't remember if it was a podcast or an interview, but he said something that I kind of just put a mental note in at the time. He said somewhere that what the best thing the Liberals could do this fall was to just be ruthlessly competent at governing. And then I think in the same week, we have the public safety minister going, we're going to need more than 5 years to confiscate the 100,000 killing machines Canadians have. And the PM's on Colbert. Show me the ruthless, zealous, narrow focus, laser precision focus on competent governance here.
I would also point out, again, one of the quips that Colbert made to an audience to a host that doesn't know anything about the state of Canada and to an audience that knows nothing about the state of Canadian healthcare system, was he made this fairly smug quip about universal healthcare in Canada, and we believe in that. How is that quip going to play to a domestic audience that's looking at the state of universal healthcare in Canada today? I mean, I saw a tweet that really took me back because I was shocked. And then I actually looked it up, and I believe it's actually true as far as I could tell, according to the data I have.
Is this the Pittsburgh thing?
Yeah. Somebody made this point that's there are literally more MRI machines in Pittsburgh than there are in all of Canada. I looked that up. That's more or less true. There are something I think the data I found was 430 odd MRI machines in Canada, which is why it takes, a year, 2 years, whatever, to get your basic diagnostic work done. Whereas in the United States, you can go down to pretty much any major city and get spend $500 to get an MRI like that.
Yeah, but we talked about this because someone in my family for a non-critical emergency issue was injured. And in the Greater Toronto area, they were told that The earliest they could get in would be 7 weeks for an MRI. And because people are constantly being bumped when emergency cases come in.
That's right.
So the real wait time was probably between 8 and 12 weeks. And I Googled Buffalo MRI clinic and called the first one that came up. And I'm like, hi, I'm in Toronto and I'm not even planning on coming in. I'm just a journalist making a call here. But what is the soonest you guys could get me in for an MRI? And they said 3:15.
And I would just point out that that's Toronto. I think that if you were to start looking at other places in Canada,
much
smaller
worse.
Cities, even rural areas, you're going to find that the wait times start to become much, much worse. And of course, that means that you're getting delays in basic diagnostics. I mean, that means that you're delayed in your healthcare. I mean, God forbid you have cancer. I mean, like, there's all kinds of problems that brings into the system. But I'm just saying, like, nobody, I mean, you and I have talked about the fact that we in Canada are very smug in justifying our very mid, frankly, healthcare system, and the current state of it by saying, well, at least it's not America. At least it's not America. At least it's not America. And as a result, you know, what's happening is a lot of countries around the world are starting to level up their healthcare systems as our healthcare system is starting to level down and collapse, right? But like, I really do wonder how well equipped like that. Well, we have universal healthcare. Do we? Do we now? Because if you can't get access to it in a timely manner, you don't have universal fucking healthcare.
I put a link to it in my column. More than half the Canadian population, according to, like, Leger does huge batch polls on kind of general public attitudes, I think once or twice a year. Mm-hmm. The most recent Leger poll, like, again, a huge audience in Canada on, what are your thoughts on healthcare? We're just like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Canadians remain committed to universal healthcare, but more than half of them now support two-tier. So everybody has universal coverage, but more than half of Canadians now support the right and ability in Canada to pay cash to have faster access to diagnostic tests and medical procedures.
And we already have two-tier healthcare. Come on now. Like, this is silly.
Hey, I got Buffalo. You have Montana, which is not as great.
A little bit further, but like we already have two-tier healthcare. What I do think that what's really interesting is that the conversation around healthcare has shifted away toward the idea that every single public service needs to be publicly delivered. And instead, we could probably move to, for example, private MRI clinics or more private. I mean, we already do have private cataract surgeries or private hip surgeries or things of that kind of nature that could help speed up some wait times. But anyway, like the conversation around what's acceptable there and what the Overton window and what Canadians will accept is radically shifting as public health care system struggles, right?
It's amazing what 12 months of a deteriorating knee will do to someone's views on healthcare.
It doesn't adjust. On that note, I do think that that's pretty much everything. That was a lot to talk about. There's always more we could talk about, but
that's always more we could talk about.
That's good. And like I said, that's pretty much just the first 3 days back this week. So we'll see what happens next week. It's only going to get more chaotic from here. And Matt and I are not running out of things to talk about.
Like and subscribe, I guess.
Like and subscribe and check us out at www.readtheline.ca. Do check out and do subscribe to our content there, because with what's happening with C18, it's very, very hard for us to grow, and it's very, very hard for us to get the message out about what we do and what we produce. So we are very, very reliant now on our email subscription list. We do have a paid and an unpaid option. So if you enjoy hearing Matt and I shoot the shit, do consider signing up and adding your email, your beloved and cherished email, to our subscription list, and we will be sure to include you and make sure you don't miss any content.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Today's podcast was brought to you by Unsmoke Canada. Now is the time to modernize Canadian laws so that adult smokers have information and access to better alternatives. By doing so, we can create lasting change. Learn more at unsmoke.ca.